Okay. Let me know when you're ready, okay, John?
I thought I'd restarted it already.
Yeah, seems like because there was message saying being recorded.
Okay, good. All right, we'll go ahead.
Okay, we'll start with the again short mindful breathing exercise to relax and quiet our mind, to bring our mind in moment present. Again, just make yourself comfortable, relaxed. And just breathe in and out naturally, normally. And as you do that, try to observe the breath and be aware as you inhale and exhale. And once your mind is calm, settled down, then we can reflect and contemplate that if we don't work with our mind to reduce the desire or the attachments, and find some level of content in our mind, in our life, we can, no matter how much we achieve, no matter how much we accomplish, no matter how much we have, we will always feel something missing, always dissatisfied. always feeling not enough. And when we feel that sense of not enough, dissatisfied, always wanting and looking for more and better, then there's no really peace in our heart, in our mind. So the only way to find sense of peace, instead of empty, feeling like a full and satisfied content, to be able to be in that state of mind or life, we must reduce the level of desire, attachment. And to reduce such desire and attachments, we need to apply the right meditations, techniques, practices, such as meditations on the essenceless of those objects of our attachment, desire, no real meaning in those objects. Contemplating, meditating on the suffering nature of those objects. As well as impermanent nature of those objects. As well as meditating on non-inherently existing nature of those phenomena. And to be able to meditate and contemplate in that way, we need to remind it of those practice meditations. And we need to continue to learn, listen, so forth. Therefore, I'm going to listen to the teachings. And we'll try to apply those teachings. Whatever I find helpful, beneficial, as much as possible in my everyday life. By coming here together to listen, to reflect, contemplate, and engage in any questions and answers, discussions. May all of this become cause and conditions to reduce and overcome the attachment or desire, strong attachment, desire, anger, resentments, impatience, mind, frustrations, ignorance, and all those destructive negative emotions. And may it be cause and condition to cultivate and fully develop the positive state of minds, the beneficial positive state of minds, such as true love, compassion, the awakening mind of the bodhicitta, wisdom, understanding impermanent nature, dependent arising, in the practice of patience, generosity, moral discipline, enthusiasm, virtues, and so forth. And may it become cause and condition to achieve fully awakened state, so we can be greatest help, benefit, not only to oneself or few, but to each and every sentient being. Okay, so then we can do the maybe we can just do the ref. Oh, okay. Yeah, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodan zoge chonam la changju pado dane kapso che dak ji so ke be so nam don la penje sangye dubash sangye chodan zoge chonam la changju pado dane kapso che dak ji so ke be so nam don la penje sangye dubash. Kanye, yeah, I think it's okay. Kanye tujenye zone, tawa tonje pambese, tabesone tunje na kodam de la cha lo. Yeah, today probably we just do that one. So last week we started the Lama Tsongkhapa, three principal aspects of the path. And again, Lama Tsongkhapa wrote, three texts on what is called Lamrim, stages of the path to enlightenment, extensive, middle, and short. And it is commentary to the one of the great Indian master, Kadamba master, Atisha Dipamkara, which is his text is called The Lamb of the Path to Enlightenment, which is very short, but then Lama Tsongkhapa wrote an extensive commentary on that. And the way it is presented in that text, the path to enlightenment is presented from the point of view of three practice, as known as the practice of small scope or initial scope, middle scope, and great scope. And the way it is presented here is slightly different, but actually it is the same path to enlightenment. But the way it is presented here is not like the three practice or three scope, but the way it is presented as a three principal aspect of the path. So it is a different presentations, different way of presenting the path to enlightenment, but in essence it's the same, in essence. And it is mentioned that these presentations is actually fit advice or instruction given by the Manjushri. One of the others masters in Sakya traditions, again, another great Sakya masters, who is also known as the manifestation of Manjushri, just like Lama Tsongkhapa. Also, he presents, is called Champashita, the four mindfulness of departures. And again, it's very similar that the way it's presented here, where he presents, if you are attached to this life, you are not true practitioners. If you are attached to samsara, then there's no true renunciation. If you're attached to yourself or selfish attitude, then it is. So like in that four presentation, and so it's very similar presentation like here. And again, it makes sense because both of them are supposed to be kind of instruction from Manjushri, and the way it's presented, very precise. But again, so anyway, it's a little bit on that. And in that presentation, we started with the first principal aspect of path, the renunciations. And as I mentioned, the way it is presented is from 3 points of view, why we need to cultivate the renunciations and how to cultivate the renunciation mind, and what is the measurement, or how do we know that we have developed that renunciation mind, so there's from the, and last week we went through the first, why we need to develop the renunciations. And again, as we mentioned last week, without the renunciation, without cultivating the renunciation mind, then there's no way to cultivate true wish to actualize liberations. And without that true wish to actualize the liberations, there's no way to free ourselves from the samsara, and so therefore that is why, if we want to free ourselves from this never-ending circle of cyclic existence, samsara, and the suffering of that, then we need to develop the renunciation mind. And then coming to the next point, how do we develop that renunciation mind? And again, we mentioned, I mentioned last week, renunciation doesn't mean renouncing external things, it's renouncing the internal, the desire, the attachments. I think that is very important to have that clarity or clarified. A lot of time when we think renounce, then it means like it's giving up the external things. It is actually giving up something internal, and that is the strong desire or attachments. And we talked a little bit last week about that. So next is how to develop that renunciation. And so what kind of meditations do we need to engage into in order to develop that renunciation mind? In order to develop that renunciation mind, then it's giving up attachment to appearance of this life or of this life, and giving attachment to the next appearance of next life. And so within that, then in terms of the first one, then here the meditation, as it is said, leisure and fortune are difficult to find, and life has no durations. True familiarity with this emphasizes on appearance of this life is reversed. So what it means is meditating on the way to overcome strong attachments to the experience of this life or just this life is to meditate on precious human rebirth and on death impermanence. And so that is where leisure and fortune are difficult to find. So that explain about this precious human life, fortune and leisure means, fortune means, that we are free from the obstacle to really engage in our spiritual path and journey or practice the Dharma. And leisure meaning having all the conducive condition to practice the Dharma. So that is, so it is saying that we are so fortunate if we really contemplate, reflect, that we have this precious human life that is free from the obstacles to practice the Dharma, main obstacles, major obstacle. Of course, there are small obstacles here and there. We are in samsara, but the major obstacle to practice the Dharma and leisure mean that we have, leisure is freedom from the, freedom from the, freedom from the obstacles and having the leisure or freedom to practice Dharma. And then, fortune or endowment or richness is that we have gathered all the major conducive condition practice the Dharma. And so they were through meditating on that, not only we recognizing through such meditation, recognizing how fortunate we are, how lucky and fortunate we are, despite whatever challenges that we have, individual challenges that we have in the life. Of course, being in samsara, we all have challenges. There's no one in samsara who is free from any challenges. Different people are experiencing different challenges in their life, in different stages of life, At certain stages of life, some people experience the challenge of health issues. In certain stages of their life, they experience the challenge of relationship. In certain stages of their life, they experience, challenges of, livelihood and so forth. So in certain stages, they experience challenge of emotional, mental challenges. So everyone, we are not only one, that every beings in the samsara, they experience certain level of challenge. And that is why we're in samsara. Despite small challenges that we all encounter in our life, despite that, if you look bigger picture, then we should feel how fortunate, lucky that I have this opportunity to really, if I want, and if I put effort, if I really want, and if I put effort to work with my mind, to reduce and overcome those afflictive emotions, those negative emotions, and thereby overcoming our actions, the karmic actions that are created because of those negative emotions, then through that we can overcome this kind of all sufferings that we experience, that we don't have to experience those sufferings if we have the interest and if we put the effort to do that. We can end this you know, we can end the samsara and the suffering of samsara, you know. And so therefore, you know, through such meditations, because we have that potential as with this precious human life, we have the potential to do that. Recognizing that and being, you know, grateful, thankful every day that no matter what other challenges, but I have these incredible potentials, you know, what we call precious human rebirth with 18 qualities, you know, 8 freedom and 10 endowments. And of course, if you want to study more, you can go in Lamrim and they're all that. But basically, you know, without going each of them, feeling how, recognizing that and feeling so fortunate to have this incredible, precious human life. And not only is this life is so precious with so much potential, if we utilize it properly, you know, is rare and difficult to find again and again. Also recognizing that not only is precious with full of potential, but is rare and is difficult to find again and again. And with that understanding, then we realize, you know, such opportunity doesn't come again and again. I shouldn't miss this opportunity which I have now, you know. And so therefore, how can I make it most meaningful and utilize it to its full potential now instead of hoping for the next time, you know. Sometimes it is interesting, you know, how our mind works, you know. We have this precious human life and we don't utilize it so much so now to practice the Dharma, but we pray, dedicate to have a precious human life next time. If you are not going to utilize when you have, then what is the point of doing that? And, you know, it's sometimes I say it is like you are hungry and the food is in front of you. Instead of eating what is here, you pray that you would get a food tomorrow or next day to satisfy your hunger, you know. So therefore, what we have now is the precious human life. So utilize it. Future, we don't know, you know. We might be able to have, we might not. We cannot, you know, it depends on many conditions. But what you already have, that precious human life, and it's not easy to obtain again and again. And therefore, you know, without wasting that great opportunity, I must, you know, utilize it well, you know, to practice the Dharma without being distracted to worldly, you know, things, you know, the object of our distractions. And then, as it says, and the life has no durations. Meanings, you know, even though this life is so precious with so much potential, but reality is that it does not last forever. You know, the life come to an end, you know. Most we might be able to live, if we are lucky, over 100, 105, 110 most. But even let's say we live 120, 30 most. But again, it come to an end. It does not last. It doesn't go forever. You know, death is something definite and certain that we all have to experience one day. No one can escape that. No one has been able to escape before. Those who are born in a samsara, no one has been able to escape, nor we will be able to escape. We are no exceptions. We will also face that reality is only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time when and how and where, we don't know. But the one thing certain, one thing definite, that we will encounter and face the death one day. So contemplating on that death is something certain, that's something definitive. But when it's going to happen, we don't know. We might have 50 years, 40 years on our side. Maybe we might have 10 years, 5 years, 1 year, we never know. Even though we feel good at the moment, even though we feel healthy and good at the moment, never know. We have seen so many people in our life, where they seem just fine and good, and you never expected them to die that year, that month, that week, that day. Suddenly it's gone. Suddenly gone, And we are also no exceptions from that, If we look in our people around us, how many of people that we have known to us, friends, from families, relatives, friends of our relatives, friends of our friends, so many of them who are no more in this world. Someone who we have known directly, some of them we didn't know directly, but we knew about them from our friends, relatives. And some of them, when they passed away, they were young, not that they all reached their age where they were in the 80s, 90s, 100s. Some of them very young, And some of them, it wasn't like they had, all of them, that they had some kind of chronic disease, and that we all knew that some of them were just feeling healthy, good. Suddenly, suddenly out of nowhere, they have heart attack. Just a day or a week before that, they check the doctor and everything's normal. They don't seem to have any problem, but suddenly something happens, and then they have heart attack. Suddenly they have accident, Suddenly something happens, and they are no more in the world. So that could happen to us too, At the moment, I feel healthy, and my doctor says there's no problem, but that is no guarantee that I will live long time, At the moment, I see the age is still on my side because I'm not in, I might feel that I have age in my side because I'm not so in 80s, 90s, 100s. But again, that doesn't guarantee, I know some of my friends who passed away very young age, as well as a relative, unexpectedly. But then that could also happen to me. That could happen to all of us. So contemplating, meditating on that, not only the death is definitely going to happen, but there's uncertain when it might happen. There's uncertain when it might happen and how it can happen. So through such contemplating and meditations, the point is that you come to awareness or understanding that where you feel, absolutely, not only the death will come one day, but it could come anytime. Having that awareness that it could come anytime. Life could come to end anytime. And when we have that understanding, realization that life could come end to any time, so then we don't postpone things that we feel important, such as the practice of Dharma. So then you try to practice and apply what you feel important now without saying, I will do tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, because, or saying, after my retirements, I've had friends, who wanted to do so many things after their retirements, wanted to travel, do a lot of things, or some of them wanted to do retreat and practice. And when they reached that retirement time, they didn't have time to do that all they wanted. They passed away. And like that, that we think, I can do later and later, after retirement, after 10 years, after 5 years, next year, or maybe I can do next month. But there is no guarantee that we will be still alive by that time. So therefore, with such meditation reflections, conclusions is to feel and to have this awareness, not only the death will come, death could come any moment, anytime. When you feel that, that it could come any moment, any times, then you will try to practice the Dharma, whatever is little or more, lot that try to apply, try to practice as much as possible without delay. Otherwise we keep on delaying. Same things, maybe there are unsolved problems that we are dealing with our families, friends, colleagues, If you have this awareness, that could come anytime. There's no guarantee I will be alive tomorrow, next week, or even tomorrow. Then, you will try to solve those problems now. If you need to ask forgiveness, you will try to ask forgiveness. If you need to forgive, you will try to forgive, because we all want to kind of pass away, by resolving all those problems. We don't want to carry those unresolved with us at the time of death and after that. So then, then you will try to do that now, And also then we have less attachments, less desire, When you feel, that our life is very short, our lives are very short and we might have very little time, then, there's no point of having too many desires, too many wants, because it is kind of having all these wants and all this desire is useless when we might be living in this life only 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, So then you started to have less desire, less wants, less attachments, basically, through the meditation on precious human rebirth and death impermanent, then we try to overcome the attachment, mainly 8 worldly concerns, as we discussed last week and before, to overcome the 8 worldly concerns. And when you don't have 8 worldly concerns, and when you don't have an attachment to 8 worldly concerns of this life, then whatever practice you do, the practice become more pure and more powerful, more effective. And less attachments, as I mentioned last week, mean less fear, less worry. Less fear, less worry, less anxiety. The more attachments, the more desire we have, there's more to be fearful, more fear, more worry, more anxiety, less attachments, less fear, less worry, less anxiety. That means less stress and more calm, more peace in your life. And when you have less stress, more calm, more peace in your life, you are able to communicate and interact with others better. And your relationship become better. When we are stressed out, when we are stressed out because of a lot of worry, anxiety, fearful, and so forth, not only it affects you, but because it is affecting you, then when you interact and communicate with others, the way you communicate, the way you interact become less calm, and then in that way, our interaction becomes not the greatest. And through that, then our relation become not the greatest. Because, small thing can kind of trigger you, in our conversations, in our interactions, in our relationship. Small can trigger you and make you disturbed and upset. Why? Because you are stressed out. Because there's too much fear, there's too much worry, there's too much panic, anxiety. And because of all of that, then, even small things can trigger you, and because of that, then, when something trigger your mind because of that, even something not so serious can also, even small things, normally it might not upset you or does not disturb you, but when you are in those states, it triggers you and upsets you, and then you respond and you react with that kind of impatience, frustration, anger. And when you act that, when you respond or react that way, other person feel that energy, and then that affect them, and then they respond in a similar way, and then the communication interactions doesn't become so healthy, positive. So that comes because of stress and fear and worries. And those stress and fear and worry, a lot of them come through a lot of strong grasping attachments. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, renunciation doesn't mean giving up external things, but it's giving up something internal, and that is the attachments. Giving the attachment here, especially attachment to this life and the experience or pleasure of this life, and 8 worldly concerns, So 8 worldly concerns are, not being attached to material wealth, not being attached to the pleasure, not being attached to praises, people saying nice things about you, praises, not being attached to reputations, because, and again, as I mentioned, it's not just the external renouncing or giving attachment doesn't mean just the external things. As many of the masters says, most difficult to give up is the reputations. And they say, some of the meditators, they give up all the external objects, they leave the home, go into the mountains without much external objects, things, they renounce, those external objects, material things, but many of them still can have a attachments to worldly concerns such as reputations. Still, they expect the people to, the others to think they are meditator, they are practitioners, that they are renounced. So still, someone can have such attachments and worldly concerns. So you have to give even that world. If you have such worldly concerns, again, even you have given up all the material things, still you have not given the attachment. So you have not fully renounced it. You have not developed the full renounced mind. And therefore, the practice, Dharma practice that you try to do does not become as pure and powerful. So through such contemplation, meditation on precious human rebirth and death impermanence, then you try to get familiar with that. Through the familiarity with this, emphasize on the appearance of this life's reverse, then you are not more attached to the experience and the pleasure of this life. You have no more attachment to that. So it doesn't mean, again, not having attachment doesn't mean, give up everything. As I mentioned, it's not necessarily giving away everything outside, but it's giving something inside. If you are not attached, then it's not a problem. There are many examples of great renowned practitioners. Of course, there are like practitioners such as Milarepa, who have renounced all the external objects, external wealth and objects, like where he has nothing except the bowl to which he eat, cook. Even the food, he just eat whatever he found in the forest, in the mountains. Even the robe, he didn't have robe to change. When he worn out, his clothes were still very worn out. But not everyone's is a great practitioner who have renounced, not always follow that necessarily that way. In many of the teaching, they give example of the 7 Dalai Lama, Gesang Gyatso, and also one of the Panchen Lama, Benja Losang Yeshe. And even though the 7 Dalai Lama, he lived in a Potala palace with, I don't know how many hundreds rooms, and with all, but he's known for renouncement because he was not attached to any of them. Because Palan Dalai Lama says, he doesn't feel all these things, doesn't belong to him. The only thing that he thinks that belong to him is his robe, the basic necessity that he needs for robe. Everything in his mind is not belong to him. Even though he lived in such a big potala with all, so much objects. So that is, you don't feel yours because you are not attached to them. You are not attached to them, so you don't feel this is mine, this belong to me, or this is mine. That is clear signs of non-attachments. You use it when it is there, and if someone take it away, you lose it. It's just like someone's things taken away by someone else, or someone's thing being lost. It doesn't affect you negatively. It doesn't disturb your mind. It doesn't upset you. It doesn't make you, unhappy, because there's no grasping attachment to that. So therefore, that is the example of that. So there are different ways that practitioners have practiced renounced life, and it's not necessarily just giving up external things, as I mentioned, and that is one of the bodhisattvas practice also, which we also, of course, we are not bodhisattvas, and we are trying to follow, and even though we haven't reached there, but one of practice, train every day, dedicating everything we have to others, saying, this is all others, and I'm using it now, just like you have loan or rent someone's things for you to use for temporary, but it doesn't belong to you. So in a sense, it belongs to other sentient beings, but I'm using it now in order to practice and to be benefit to others, solely for that. So in the training your mind, that all these things that I have, it doesn't belong to me, it is others. And it's like I'm just using them, so that it can be conditioned for me to practice and to be help and benefit to others. And so that, that is something, you try to recite every day and try to practice every morning, when you, so not only, and then through such practice, you to reach a state when one day that you don't really have any grasping and clinging and feeling is mine or it belongs to mine, so there's no more attachments, grasping. And when that happens, then, the attachment to the experience of this life is gone and it's been reversed, So that is the combined meditation on precious human rebirth and death impermanence together, then through the meditation and practice and through having this awareness, realizations, then you reduce and give up attachment to this life. Attachment this life. Even though there is no attachment this life, but you try to preserve this life. Not being attachment doesn't mean not taking care of your life and not to preserve it. Even you are not attached to it, you have to take care of it, you have to preserve it, because this life can be the best vehicle or condition to practice the Dharma, to liberate, to achieve enlightenment, and to be help and benefit to others. It's just like, sometimes you have to take medicine, bitter medicine. You are not attached to that, but you take it, don't we? Certain medicines, you wish you don't want to take it. You are not attached to that, taking that medicine, or even that taste, the flavor, the taste is bitter. You are not attached to that, but still, even you are not attached to it, you take it because it's necessary to keep you healthy, to cure your illness. Same way, even though we are not attached to our life, of this life and the experience of this life, but because it can be a cause to practice the Dharma, it can be a source to be help and benefit to others, and therefore you try to take care of it. You try to take care of it. You try to take care of it. And when you are not attached to it, as I mentioned, if you have, it's great, you enjoy. Even you don't have, you don't complain, you don't be so unhappy. You don't be so unhappy and disturbed. If we are attached, then, when we have, we feel good. When we lose it, when we don't have, then we become very unhappy, disturbed, dissatisfied. And so in that way, then we experience, our mind, we lose peace in our mind, tranquility, because our mind is changing and fluctuating all the time, We have good health and we feel good. And when we have bad health, we feel bad, disturbed, unhappy. When we have good weather, we feel very excited, happy, and that. When the weather changes, our mind is unhappy, disturbed, When people are nice to us, we feel happy and that. And when we feel people are not nice to us, we get disturbed, unhappy, When we hear people talking nice about you, hear the praise or good things about you, we feel happy. But when we hear people criticizing you, talking bad about you, we feel unhappy. So, there is no consistency, stability, peace, and happiness. It's always fluctuating up and down all the time. That is because we are attached to all of that, because we are attached to them, attached to the reputation, praise, wealth, good health, good experience, all of that. But if you are not attached to that, of course, you will try to have them, keep them. And when it is there, you enjoy. And when you don't have them, you lose them, still you can be quite happy and not so disturbed. Still you can find kind of peace, stability in your mind, in your life. And because you are not so desperately wanting that object, you are not so grasping to that object, that experience, whatever, because you don't have that strong attachment or desire, you are okay with that. When you have, you are okay. When you don't have, you are also okay. You can manage. And when you are in that state, then you can find more peace in your life, when there is change in this unstable, impermanent phenomena of our own life experience, things, objects around us. When there is constant change, it doesn't affect you so much. It doesn't affect you so much when there is constant change, because you are not so attached to one particular. You are not so attached to one particular experience. You are not attached to one particular instant, circumstances, objects, because you are not attached to one particular situation, event, experience, circumstances, whatever. And so when there is change, you can deal with that. You can manage that. You are okay with that. And when you are able to do that, then of course, there's much more peace in your life. And so that comes through having less attachments. When you have less attachment, you are more content. When you are more content, you are okay with, whether you have big house, small house, no house, you still can be happy. You can still be happy, content. And when we don't have that contentment, when we have strong attachment, desire, even you have big house, even you have many houses, even you are billionaire, even you are trillionaire, still you are not unhappy. Still you feel dissatisfied, still unhappy. So the sense of whether you have happiness or not, it depends on your state of mind, whether your mind is content and satisfied, or whether your mind is, dissatisfied mind of attachment and desire, So a lot of time when we hear, when people hear this concept of non-attachments, giving of attachments or non-attachment, they think without attachments, your life will be quite kind of miserable and unhappy, but actually it's the opposite. It's the opposite. Attachment make your life and your experience fluctuating, changing all the time, up and down all the time by the change in external factors, conditions, up and down all the time. On the other hand, when there is no more attachment anymore, the external changes, the changes around you doesn't affect you so much. You can keep your mind more consistent, stable, and not fluctuating up and down so much like that we do at the moment. And therefore, when your mind is more stable, consistent, and not fluctuating up and down all the time, then you find more peace, more happiness. So non-attachment or not having less attachment, not having attachment make your life much more calm, peaceful, and joyful. You can laugh and be joyful, when it's raining or when it's snowing or when it's drought, whatever, hot, cold, regardless, all different weather, for example. Of course, not just the weather, this is a small example. You can still be very joyful, happy, and laughing all the times. And that applies to everything. So that is, and then the next, overcoming the attachment to the appearance of next life, future lives, If you think again and again about the actions and the inevitable effects and the suffering of cyclic existence emphasize on the appearance of future life will reverse. So here, meditating on karma, law of cause and effect, and meditating on the suffering of samsara, cyclic existence in general. Through meditating on those two subjects, by meditating on those two, and through having awareness realizations of the law of cause and effect, the karma, and the nature of suffering, as long as you're in samsara, then with that understanding, then you don't get attached to, not only this life, but even the higher, better experience of future life as well. And that you don't get attached not only to this life, but you don't get attached to even better life in futures, Sometimes we might be not attached to this life, but we might be wishing for better life, life, let's say, even such as in the Pure Land, we might be attached to that. If you're attached to that, even if that is still, then it's still attachment, So here, making law of cause and effect, the karma. So from Buddhist point of view, we all have to experience death, and we don't know when it is going to come. And what helps at the time of death and after death is our own practice, our own state of mind, our own karma, how we live our life and what kind of karmic potential or seed that we have created while we are alive. Nothing else, at the time of death, what help us, you might be billionaire, trillionaire, but at the time of death, nothing help that. That money is nothing use, nothing. You might be very famous at the time of death. It doesn't make any difference whether you are famous or you are unknown. At the time of death, it doesn't make any difference whether you are rich or you are very poor. At the time of death, it doesn't make any difference whether you have a lot of degree or you didn't have any degree. What helps at the time of death is your Dharma practice. Your Dharma practice. If you practice Dharma well, that will help your mind to be calm, peaceful, and deal with, experiencing the death. You can deal with much calm, more peaceful, more accepting, much more positively. And with that, your Dharma practice, you can handle the situation much more better. So you can die, more peaceful, less struggle, calm. That's what it can help at that time, your Dharma practice. If we have practiced well enough, the tool that you have developed with your practice, the tool can come handy at that time to deal with that, without so much struggles, emotional pain and challenges. That's what helps at the time of death. If we have practiced our Dharma at the time of death, you have less regret, less guilt, There's a lot that you can rejoice about, about all the good things that you did, all the virtues that you have done. Think that you, instead of being regretful and guilt and struggling with those feelings, you can look back and there is so much to you to be rejoicing. All the virtues, all the good things that you have done. So, all that also helps in your time of death. And after the death, what helps is our Dharma practice, the positive imprint, the karmic imprint that we have left in our consciousness, nothing. When we die, we cannot take any penny. As the Buddha said, when the death comes, the king and the beggar die same way. They both go with empty hand. Without the king cannot take anything, and just as the beggar, empty hand, they die similarly, in that way. You cannot take anything, no matter how much reputations, degrees, positions, power, money, whatever you have, you leave everything behind. You cannot take any of them. You move forward. And it is only that. So after the time of death, after the death, as according to the Buddhism, it doesn't end there. Like when the candle run out, then that's it. There's no continuity. It's not like that. The consciousness continue. Even though our bodies, whatever we bury or cremate it or whatever we do it, but the consciousness continue carrying the karmic seeds, all the positive karmic seeds or negative karmic seeds that we have created, carrying that, And what kind of life we have next, it depends on what kind of wind or karma it blows. Of course, there are certain more enlightened beings who have control over their mind, control over their actions. Therefore, they can decide, where they want to be born, in which universe, in which country, in which place, or even in which family. They can make decisions. They can make a choice. But the ordinary beings who do not have those control, then we don't have the choice. But it depends on what karma, At the time of death, if our negative karma is predominated, because we have lived our life with a much more negative karma, then at the time of death, that karma becomes predominated, and with that predominated negative karma, the most likely we will have a more unfortunate rebirth and more painful and suffering life next time. On the other hand, if we live our life virtuous, positive, with more virtues and with a positive karma, at the time of death, that karma manifests and that predominates karma. And with that, most likely we have a higher, better rebirth, better conditions, better experience in next life. And that is what decides what kind of experience, rebirth and experience we have in the future. It depends on our present karma. And what kind of present karma that will be dominated at that time, it depends on how we live our life. And, so therefore, and as long as we have this contaminated karma, we will never be free from the suffering, never be free from the samsara. So we have to end this contaminated karma. To end this contaminated karma, then we have to cut the root of those contaminated karma, that is afflicted with emotion. those delusions that influence us to engage in the creating contaminated karma. And so when you understand, better understanding with karma, and especially all the contaminated karma, and a better understanding of the nature of samsara, then, your attachment to the samsara, all kind of samsaric pleasure and samsara experience, you will have less attachment and less grasping, clinging to that. And through that, you can give up attachment to not only this life and experience this life, also the experience of even better future life. So you are not attached to any of the samsaric experience, even is better than this one. And through that, by giving up or letting go of attachments, then you are able to develop the renunciation mind. And by having developed renunciation mind, then we develop really the inspiration, the wish to achieve true liberations. And when you have this, the aspiration to achieve true liberation from the samsara, then, the practice that you engage in to become true practice, powerful practice, effective. And so I think today maybe I will end here, and I can take some questions. If anyone has questions, please unmute yourself. Any comments, any questions? Does anyone has anyone? Seems like someone has questions, but
That's because Mary Jo is not here, of course.
so you can pretend you are Mary Jo. And then you can ask her questions. Yes, I can see it. There's no Mary Jo, but there's Mary Camilla.
Thank you, Geshe-la, for the teaching and KTBC. I don't know if I really have a question. I just want to thank you for the teaching because, as always, I felt like you were reading my mind and teaching to me of exactly where I'm at right now with a family, sibling communications, and with my mother's she's really declining her health. And so when you were talking about death, but also about like the communication and if our mind's not stable, how that energy then is conveyed to everybody else and how it just disrupts and causes so many negative karmic seeds. And it's not even communicating verbally, it is by text. So I have 3 sisters and a brother, and everyone has their own attachments and expectations of what's happening to my mom and with her care and with decisions. And boy, Geshe-la, the teaching tonight was just, I was trying to take notes to remind me about finding peace and stability, because it's everything I know, but it's like, what did you say before? Less than a finger snap in one of your teachings, like we can get distracted and lose that stability. So I just want to say thank you, because everything you were talking about was just like a huge reminder about how many negative karmic seeds I've created this week with texting. And I know better, but sometimes I don't watch my, it's not watching your speech because you're doing it over text, but it's still misinterpreted, even though you're intention's good. 4 other people are reading it a different way. And then, so I just, it was very peaceful to come to class tonight.
Thank you for, and that is one of the things that I keep on reminding, why we need to hear the teachings again and again, why we need to study. It is these subjects we have all learned for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, but a lot of time, because we haven't put enough in the practice, so it hasn't ingrained in ourselves at the moment, so we forget that we have the information, but when we need it, we are not aware of that, mindful of that. And then, so coming to teaching, that help us to be reminded of those teachings, and at least it helped us to be reminded for a week, if not for long, in a week or for a few days. And that also makes a huge difference, even if it's a few days, for us to be able to remember that. And so that is why, of course, if one have already developed all these realizations and we already ingrained those teachings and practice, and we are 24 hours very aware of that, maybe then we don't need to be reminded of that. But otherwise, it's very important to remind. And it's same with me, when I go to His Holiness the Lama's teaching or Lama Savarimpoche teaching, that those are things, when they give those teachings, it helps you to remind those core things that you have learned 40 years still, to at least it helps you to remind you and be mindful of, therefore, at least sometime a month, sometime maybe not a month, for sometime a week, and even that's great. And so also thank you for sharing. And I think also that is because sometimes what we think is that, well, I've studied and learned this topic, these subjects, I know all heart by heart, but then again, when we really need it, we're unable to use it because at that moment we forget to apply, and at that moment we forget to remind those teachings, those practice. And so therefore hearing the teachings again help us to kind of refresh and remind, and then to be able to put into practice, even it means for few weeks, few months, or few days, and then again another reminder keep us going forward like that. Okay. Any other questions? Seems like Hunter might have something.
Yes. My question is kind of about being attached to someone else's suffering, or like wanting them to be okay or relieve their suffering, and not being able to do anything about that, and how to I don't know really what it is, but I've just experienced that in my life, where I've felt really strongly like I don't want this person to be in pain, and it's brought me more suffering maybe than it should have. So if you have any thoughts to share on that, that would be helpful.
Yes, again, that is when we talk about it worldly concern, that is one of things, attachment to your own happiness or pleasure and your friends, families, and so forth. The other attachment is the attachment to be free yourself, your family, friends, others from the sufferings. The opposite of that, so being so attached to see this yourself or your parent or your siblings or your friends or someone, another beings, to see them being attached to this idea of the state of being free from the sufferings. And that also, because we're attached to that state, it also brings sufferings. And same in the country, like we want to see this country or rest of the world peaceful. We are attached to that idea. Whether it's this country, the whole world we live in, that it must be peaceful, kind, compassion, caring, all of that. Of course, that is good inspirations and good wishes, as long as we're not attached to that ideas. When you become attached to that, then that is where the suffering comes. So when you don't see that happening, or it's going the other direction, then it brings you so much pain and suffering and disturb and all of that, because we're attached to that state. So similarly, so therefore, even in such state, that even though it's the wish or the aspirations to see someone being free from suffering, wanting to see them from suffering, is a positive, is a good, is a compassion, and it's just something that we try to develop, that we try to develop that kind of mind. But when you're not only you have the wish and inspiration, but when you really get attached to that, then it becomes something else. Then it becomes cause of sufferings. So I think that is even that we have to give let go. And so when we see someone experience, we want to see them free from sufferings. We don't want to see them suffering, but they are experiencing suffering. And sometimes we might be able to help, sometimes we might not be able to help. Even though you have the wish to help them to be free from suffering, but maybe we don't have the skill, we don't have the right means. Maybe there's not much we can do about it. And so in such cases, instead of feeling hopeless, helpless, you can do some meditation practice. There are different meditation practice. One way is that you can do Tonglen. You can imagine and visualize taking their suffering on yourself and giving them, sending them and giving them your happiness and your virtues to them, and that by receiving that virtues, your virtues and your happiness, that they begin to, be more happy and less pain and less sufferings. So that is one meditation or practice that one can do, what we call taking and giving, Tonglen, taking their suffering on oneself, and then you try to imagine and send and give your happiness and joy to them. So that is one practice that at least we can do when we feel helpless. And that other things is, whatever positive things, virtues, positive, good things that we try to do in our life, we try to dedicate all of that for that person's the suffering to end, or the suffering to be reduced and end the suffering, and for them to find the solution and joy in their life, so that we can dedicate whatever virtues, positive things that you do, you can dedicate for them, and sometimes also one can imagine and visualize, whatever Buddhas or deity that you feel connected, whether it's the medicine Buddha, healing Buddha, or whether it's the Mother Tara or any other Buddha, and while you recite the mantras, you can imagine that deity on top of that person's head, and then as you recite the mantra, you can visualize from that the Buddha, light and healing light and nectar flow, and healing the sufferings, the cause of sufferings, and then them receiving the joy and happiness. So there are many different practices that one can engage instead of feeling there is nothing I can do, feeling that helpless and hopeless that there is nothing I can do about it, but instead you can try to do those practice. And it definitely, does not, it help. Even sometimes we might not see the result immediately. Sometimes you might see the changes and results. Sometimes you might not see the result change immediately, but it doesn't hurt, it helps. And especially it helps yourself, instead of feeling overwhelmed and helpless, at least you can feel that at least this is something I can contribute. At least this is something I can do on a spiritual level, even though I cannot help on physically in actions, but at least I can do something and through my spiritual from that practicing spiritually. So yeah. Okay, so we can do the dedications. Gyawadi nyodo da lama sangye tu kyune do wa chi kyama le pa te sa la pe ba sho chang jo sem jo rin bo che ma ke pa na ke kyo che Kewa nyamba me bayang kong le kong du kewa ra show. The wish granting, wish fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparable kindness in Yazu, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Peerless. Can you go a little down? I cannot read. Okay. Peerless teachers and assembly of the children of Victorious One, Savaga and Pratika Buddhas, Victorious Lord and Father and Son, along with the lineage master, all the object of refuge or infinite land, please bestow the virtues and goodness or accomplish in this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading Muni's precious and complete teaching through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable venerable Guru, to you I make request. While stopping single-pointedly for the sake of Victorious One's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessing of the ocean of the three jewels and the great wave Bodhicitta of children of the Victorious One, may the smile of reincarnation swiftly beam in the glory for fortunate disciples. Venerable One, to you whose kindness exists that of all the conqueror, for those wandering in the far-off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us in intentionally descending again into the family of far distant land, we make this request, O Lama, please live long. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Geshe-la.
Ursula,
Okay.
travel
Thank you.
safely, and we'll see you in a couple of
Yes.
weeks, we hope.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Bye. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye,
Good
Elo.
night. Night.
Good night.
Bye, Elora.
Bye-bye.
All right.